beyond choices as far as how you can go about setting up your own simulator. And for many people, myself included, that's a barrier to entry. It's difficult when you're trying to get that first time setup figured out. And for that reason, we've decided to put on this seminar at this particular event to help give everyone a really clear understanding of what it means to set up your own simulator. And I'll try and be as specific as possible and give you 6 steps as far as how that can be done, and try and give you as much information about how easy it is to actually make that happen. Today's presentation is designed to give you some information, so I can't make all the decisions for you. In fact, nobody can. There is no one-size-fits-all approach. That's partially why it's so complicated. If you're someone who likes to fly military jetliners, your sim is going to look very different from someone who likes to fly helicopters. Or if you're a Cirrus pilot with a joystick, you may not like it if your sim setup has a yoke. So there are some decisions, and I'll be giving you the information that you need to make them. But again, you'll need to make those decisions on your own once you have it. And finally, most people find that it's very possible to set up an at-home simulator for less than $3,000. Maybe even less than $25,000. It will really depend on your own preferences. So we'll talk a lot about how that can happen and more about how those things work in just a few minutes. We talked just briefly about Boston Virtual ATC. We're a flight simulation community like FlightSim, like Aviation. We provide air traffic control. So if you're setting up a home simulator, you want to connect to that simulator, maybe talk to air traffic controllers, see other pilots, fly online with the group, that's one of the things that we offer. Again, very much like Aviation and FlightSim. And we're here today because we've been a founding sponsor of this conference, and I'm here speaking about this because I've spent a lot of time working with individuals about their sim setups and talking about what works and what doesn't. And so we've learned from our 7 years or so of working with different individuals in this industry about what tends to work best. But that being said, this is just one opinion, and there are many more. As you just saw if you were here for our panel discussion, lots of people have preferences around simulator platforms, around add-ons, and there really are many choices. So this will be our opinion and our ideas around how you might go about setting up a first-time simulator. But again, it's not the only way to go about it. And I would encourage you to take this information, head outside, talk to our exhibitors, talk to some of the people in the audience or some of the attendees here at the conference, and see what they think, particularly if they have a lot of experience. This slide's easy for me because it's all about me, my favorite subject in the world. We'll start with my setup. This is a picture from a couple of years ago, but it still serves relevance. It's mostly an air traffic control-based setup, so I've got a couple of different screens there for the radar, the charts, that kind of thing. I do also have a pilot setup, and when I do that, I've got a yoke, rudder pedals, and a couple of throttle quadrants, and I'll show you what I have in a couple minutes. Of course, I'm a member of Boston Virtual ATC. I've talked about that already. Anyone in the white polo shirts or the blue shirt that Mark is wearing right there, Mark, say hi, are all BVA members. And they're here as our sponsors. They're here for you. So if you're interested in trying out a simulator, if you want to ask a question about using a particular product, that's what they're here for. They've all volunteered for you to be able to explore this world of flight simulation that much further. I am a pilot as well. I had a private license since about 2012. Was flying recreationally for a little while, and then about a year ago made the very natural career transition from management consulting to commercial pilot. I'm sure many people do that. And now a commercial pilot for Island Express Air, which is a small scheduled and commuter charter type airline in the northwest portion of North America. So my first of several questions today is, what aircraft type is that? It's hard to see, I know. Navajo, very good. Just from over there. You're going to be number 1. That means at the end you'll have your choice of all these prizes. And I'll ask a couple of questions throughout. We've got lots of goodies to give away. So just remember your numbers, that way you have first choice. We've got a bunch of different prizes over the course of this conference donated by Just Planes, by PilotsEye.tv, by Wilco Publishing, and by Plantronics. And those are all available, so be alert and be ready if you want to ask some of those questions. We'll get into this in just a moment, and we'll talk a little bit more about the why and the how. But I do want to talk about just a couple of housekeeping things. First of all, there is a test at the end of this, but it's a very easy test. So be ready for that. There is also, though, a presentation online. So at the end of this session, I'm going to give you a link to all of the same content. So the names, the URLs, don't feel like you have to be frantically scribbling them down. I know, I didn't tell you that until now. It's terrible, right? Yeah. Just wanted to see if I could get you. So there is a version of this online and has all this information in it. So you don't need to write down everything. You'll just need to write down the link to that presentation so you have everything. And the other point to mention, you'll see a blue FlightSimCon logo appearing throughout the slide, and I'll point it out the first time it comes up. that indicates that that particular group is here. So that gives you the opportunity to speak with them and actually talk to them directly about what we're talking about. So I'll talk just a little bit now about why you might want to do this. And in case it's not already clear from the people that you've talked to, the fact that you're here already, why you might want to do this. If you're rated and a student pilot, Flight Simulator offers an incredible ability to basically train and practice before you go out in the actual airplane. And if you're somebody who is a rated pilot who maybe flies once or twice a month, Flight Simulator offers you the ability to stay current, to stay sharp, and do that at a fraction of the cost of what it would be if you were actually trying to go out in an actual airplane. Now, who in the room knows what the minimum number of hours required for an FAA PPL is?
40.
Sir Richard? 40, very good, you're number 2. I'm going to lose track of those numbers very quickly, so I'm going to ask for your help with that. So 40 hours is the minimum. What's the average number of hours it takes most people?
55.
55? Yeah?
60.
60? Something like that, somewhere in the 60 to 70 range. Number 3 and number 4? Remember those?
All right.
So that's about 60 to 70 hours somewhere is the typical average. So if you look at that spread, 20 hours or so, well, 20 hours of flying at $150 an hour, which is a lot cheaper than I can fly, that's already $3,000. So if you're talking about building an at-home simulator for $2,000 or $3,000, you may well pay that back. Now, I'm not promising that you can do your PPL in 40 hours if you have your own sim. But I will say that several of our BVA members who are just about to get their PPL are doing that at 41, 42, and 45 hours. And that's incredibly low amount of time by comparison to the average. So that gives you a sense of what it can do. You have the ability to practice your communication. So jump in the airplane, and the very first time that you're in an airplane, you can talk to ATC. Nobody else can do that but flight sim people. I'm seeing a lot of people nodding in the room as well in agreement to that point. So that's a really great reason if you are a student pilot. And if you're a simulation enthusiast, somebody who's always wanted to get into this, but maybe you're not interested in real-world aviation, and don't have the money for it like many of us, then the ability to set up a real sim that really matches your passion, that's why you'd want to do this. So if you have the opportunity, you're flying maybe now with a joystick and a laptop, it's just not going to look the same. If you want it to look really good, this will be the way to do it. Hopefully I don't have to talk too much more about the why, and I'll get right into the how. Just before I do that, though, a couple of questions for everyone in the audience. How many people have an at-home simulator and have set something up before? How many people have never done it? Okay, just a couple. Good. So most of you then are looking to probably upgrade your setups or maybe start to improve a little bit. Is that right? Okay, very good. So keep that in mind as we go through this. I'm going to talk about 6 steps. I'm going to talk about simulator platforms a little bit. We'll talk about what makes sense from a system hardware perspective. I think this is probably the most interesting for a lot of people in the room. Do you buy? Do you build? Do you try to maybe upgrade what you have right now? We'll talk about different control hardware options. Next, we'll talk about add-ons, some of the different software and things like that that are available. Talk just a little bit about getting everything installed, and then finally we'll talk about the online communities. And I have some help here on the hardware piece because I'm definitely not the expert. So we'll jump in and talk about platforms, and I've talked just a little bit about this already. We'll just ignore this stuff, that's coming later. Talk a little about the history of the Flight Simulator franchise. We've talked a bit about this in the panel discussion, but history is important here. Now, Flight Simulator started in 1982. That predates Windows, that predates Microsoft, and it probably predates many of us in this room. So that gives you a sense of just how long this platform and this franchise has actually been around. Now, we've had several releases of the Microsoft Flight Simulator franchise going all the way up to 2006. And in 2006, of course, we have MSX. How many people use MSX? Most of us? Good. And that really is, I mean, even today, really, is the gold standard in flight simulation. We haven't seen anything that's had the popularity and the reach of FSX to date. But of course, as many of you know, in 2009, Microsoft closed the studio that does MS development. And while they made a very brief and very failed foray into the industry again with Flight back in 2012, really, I think Microsoft is out of the industry for now and probably for the foreseeable future. And if you were here in our last panel discussion, it seems most people think that's a good thing. What came out of FSX, though, was Prepared back in 2010, and then just recently, FSX Steam Edition in the end of 2014, early 2015. Why this is important, you'll hear me talk a lot about this before, or sorry, throughout the presentation rather, that flight simulation is, or flight simulator itself really is an operating system. So when we talk about flight simulation, we're talking about almost installing Windows. And then you go in and you install the programs that are interesting to you. So that's add-ons. So your Active Skies, your Rexes, your PMDG, NGXs, those kinds of things. And because of this long history and because of its popularity, FSX and also its sort of sister programs, P3D and FSX Steam Edition, have this incredible community of developers built up around it. So you can get an add-on for anything, freeware, payware, it doesn't matter. And that's a really important point going forward as we look into some platforms. And there's really three key platforms that are available on the market today. And I'll talk about the first two, FSX Steam Edition and Prepared. These are the two offshoots of FSX originally. So many of the add-ons, many of the original components, all those things will still work. I'll start with FSX Steam Edition, so compatible with Windows only, same for P3D. And it really was a re-release of FSX. So if you have FSX today, you're not going to see a whole lot in terms of FSX Steam Edition. You're not going to see much improvement. It's really basically the same program. They're having a few compatibility issues as well, so if you use certain programs or add-ons, you may get in trouble with that. For that reason, really, our recommendation is Prepared. Again, based on the original FSX code, but they've gone into several improvements. If you're new to the industry, you're wondering, hey, which platform should I pick? Prepared really gives you the best of the current day technology. You're going to see a lot of improvement over what's available in FSX, but you still get that compatibility with the many, many add-ons that are available for the software. Question?
I thought that Prepared was more expensive than $60.
It depends on the license, and that's a wonderful question. So there's a couple of licenses. One is the academic license for $60, and then there's also a $200 professional license as well. And the question as to which of those two licenses you choose is a little bit dependent, but sort of officially, it sort of says if you're using it for training or simulation purposes, you more or less fall into the academic category. And as I think DeAndre put it, we sort of don't smile when we're using P3D, and then we say it's academic. But that's a joke, by the way. It was much funnier when he said it. I don't know why.
I've listened to
It's a serious joke.
panels, and
That's
I
right.
noticed there's one flight simulator nobody mentions.
Flight gear?
Flight gear, yeah.
Yeah.
I've tried 3 simulators in 1 month, and on a very, very high performance rig, and I tried to get the best. I tried all 3 of them. And I tried flight gear, and the problem with flight gear, it's amazing. And I'm a former pilot. I used to be a first officer a long time ago. But it's the only problem, flight gear, where I sat in the cockpit. I had a deja vu. You know, completely. I don't know if you tried it. The latest version, you have like 400 free aircraft.
Right.
I tried the 777 because there's so many. If you get the wrong aircraft, I don't know how they do it. I don't know much about them, but I'm surprised that in this community nobody talks about it, because I tried it, and the only problem I have is that I can't load any of the instruments. Nothing. I mean, SATEC or
Right.
there's no compatibility. And that's the only downside of it, actually. But otherwise, the flying, everything, the visuals were staggering.
Right.
Stock. Just as did you try it?
I've seen it. I haven't had much experience with it. And Ken, I may get your help on this one to see whether you have any experience. But for I think those in the room and for those of us in the community, we've just found that those main 3 platforms, I'm going to add XPlane up there in a second, have tended to give us the most fulsome experience. And if we're talking about using this as a training tool, that's what we've found tends to work best, just based on, again, how much is available for it and how established they are. Ken, any feedback from you on what you've seen in the work you've done?
Yeah, basically it's getting a following and it's gaining ground, but you said yourself there's just too many compatibility problems. You can't just go buy everything, set it up, and fly. You're very restricted. When it gets there, like I said, it has almost like a little cult following to it, and it is good, but it's just not there yet. And I would say of the last 100 PCs I've sold, I don't think that we've installed it once, or even had a request to install it once. So it's not getting the traction outside of its following because of certain compatibility. They bought all this nice hardware, they've invested in a cockpit already, and they can't use it. So they don't even give it a chance. But there is a lot of good. It's open source, and there's a lot to it. Anyone can beat open source. The code's available for anyone to develop for it. It's a unique platform, but there's too many shortcomings as of right now.
Makes sense. Thanks a lot. And I'll introduce Ken a little bit more as he comes up in just a minute here. Let's talk about XPlane as well, and Austin Myers in the back of the room there. Austin, if you wave to everybody, it's just there behind you. Austin Myers is the developer of XPlane. We're super excited to have him here, and I'm excited to let him explain XPlane to you tomorrow. He's running a seminar, and it'll be focused on exactly what XPlane is. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about it. It's very different from the other 2 platforms, and what's neat about it is that you actually have the developer here, and it's someone who's willing to come out to events like this, which is really fantastic to see. Unlike Windows-based platforms, so Prepared and Steam, you can only run them if you're running Windows. XPlane you can run on a Mac, you can run on Linux, there's even a freeware version you can run on your phone. So there's definitely a lot more out there in terms of options with platforms and different operating systems. It is under active development, like I said, and it is used quite a bit commercially, but we haven't seen the same amount of traction as we've seen from the Microsoft-based platforms yet in this community. And so you saw in the panel discussion a few minutes ago, we kind of did a poll on who had tried XPlane. We can do it again. Who's tried XPlane? Right? Who's tried Prepared? So kind of similar numbers actually, which is interesting, but certainly much smaller than those groups that have tried FSX. And so for that reason, my focus today is going to be on the FSX-based platforms. As our recommendation as a community for people who are just getting in now is really Prepared. Again, based on the fact that you have that compatibility, but there's still active development, and they've done a lot to improve what's available. Of course, if you run FSX today, that's a great platform as well. And a lot of people haven't seen the need to upgrade just yet. And I think we're going to see that continue for some time. But certainly excited to see what XPlane has to offer. And I think you'll start to see more and more interest from XPlane. As you saw, there's a lot more interest from the developer community now in XPlane than there was previously. Let me stop there. I know there's probably some questions so far. So anything I've talked about so far that you have questions on or anything else you've been wondering, give you a chance to do that now. A question? Just go over here first.
So I have FSX, and I've got a pretty powerful computer. It's an i5 and a full gigabyte graphics card. I mean, but still, you get these fatal errors and freezes, especially if you go up into these complicated aircraft like the P777. It's so aggravating, especially as coming into an approach. You fly the whole flight and then boom, it's gone.
Who's had that experience? All of us, pretty much, yeah.
Or the joystick stops working, the USB disconnects.
For sure.
And I've gone on all the forums and tried to see and tried everything, and nothing seems to work. And you just never know when it's going to happen. So I was wondering the stability of the other two, Prepared and XPlane, if they were any better, and just one more follow up on that is that, are you going to tell us maybe how we can configure the system? Is this just something that we have to live with, or is there a way to configure a whole new home system so that you don't have these kinds of issues?
You need home phone numbers.
Do you want to take that one right away? Sure. So let me introduce Ken here. This is a great opportunity, so thanks for the question. Ken is from Jetline Systems. Hopefully you guys have been out there to see them. In case you haven't, Jetline Systems is a builder of custom flight simulation PCs. And so this is all they do. All they do is build outstanding flight sim PCs. They test them in their lab, and they'll ship them to you with everything that you want installed. And the other great thing about it is they support them as well. And so once you make that purchase, if you're getting those fatal errors, you give them a call and they can help walk you through that. So I've invited him up to help me on the hardware side of things because I'm not an expert there. He has some great experience selling PCs and seeing which of these platforms are interesting. So Ken, I'll let you take that, and then if you wanted to keep going on and talk about some of the hardware ideas.
Okay, yeah, well that's the exact reason, why our company's been successful, is we support, beyond the computer, just the entire simulation. Like I think I was telling Evan, right the day before I came up here, I spent 6 hours on the phone configuring someone's computer that had 39 USB devices plugged into it. Because he called me, he's like, I'm having trouble with my PC, so I'm shutting down. And it had 39. But you're getting a lot, especially when you get into having 47 different developers all writing products that you expect to just mesh and meld together perfectly. It is really finicky, and it just takes a lot of work.
Did you find the bug?
Yeah. His USB controller was overloaded, so we sent him an extra PCI Express USB controller so he could share the loading across the system, and then everything worked fine. But it can be stable. It just takes like almost a small IT department to get it stable. Rick is one of our customers, and he calls me all the time.
That's why I'm here.
He calls me when he needs to update his graphics card driver. There we go, remote in, updated graphics card driver. And whenever he has a problem, when we go to talk about hardware, that's where you get into the hardware choices and stuff. So
yeah, have you seen more stability with Prepared as opposed to FSX? Would you say?
Not necessarily with the complexities of everything.
Okay, yeah, fair enough. I think for me, it's I've done a lot of support for people having fatal errors and things like that. And for me, there's usually a fix, not always, but often. And let's talk afterwards a little bit more. I've got a couple of tips, particularly for the...
It's just figuring out what the fix is.
Exactly. And that's the nice thing about flight sim and repair is you have a really large community, so you can usually find the answer. It's not the best organized community, but we have, for example, at Boston Virtual, we have a whole guide on fatal errors, and it just goes through and says, are you getting this error, that error, and it resolves those. I don't know if you've tried that yet. Yeah, okay. So we'll see if we can get anything. That's got most of it, but typically I think we see that. I can't speak to XPlane, but Austin certainly will tomorrow. We'll talk more about stability and how his platform would actually compare
Well, they have
in that regard.
less third-party involvement,
Exactly.
so
Exactly.
you get some stability there.
Sure. Is there another question over here? No? Back there?
Yeah, just briefly, it says up there several improvements on Prepared 3D. Just a couple what items are the improvements on Prepared 3D? I guess I just know what's the improvement of your second bullet point on there.
Just looking to that. So you're saying that what improvements is prepared? Yeah, right. So they've gone and actually basically, I would say it's almost to the point of FS 11. So they've gone and totally improved the textures, the way things look, the way the program runs. They're actually running it at Jetline Systems booth, and it's default, stock, no add-ons prepared. And my jaw dropped when I saw it, because it just looks incredible. So you can think of it like all of those things that we didn't really love about FSX that should have been fixed in FS 11. I think they're getting close to that.
I have a question regarding Prepare 3D. I mean, Lockheed Martin is behind it.
Yes.
What's the interaction between Lockheed Martin and Prepare 3D? What's the, I mean, is
Lockheed
it
Martin is
necessarily
the company that produces
Yes.
P3D.
I mean, they make some of the best aircraft, lots of weapon systems, lots of things. So,
Yeah.
what is the interaction? Are they really working together, or is this a totally separate thing?
I think, well, P3D is part of Lockheed Martin, right? So the company Lockheed Martin creates the software, and I think most people assume that it's primarily based for the military use. So they probably created it for their own purposes, but they're saying, hey, we'll sell it to some of the flight sim users on the side. A couple questions back there. Do maybe two more real quickly, and then keep going.
Yeah, I was going to ask, I have a, knock on wood, I have a very smooth running FSX boxed version for many years.
No.
Is there any logic into switching over to Steam?
No.
I've read some articles that,
Did you want more detail?
well, I've read a few articles that people are finding, more frame rates, things like that.
Yeah, I've heard that as well. I haven't gone the full route of upgrading, but I had a laptop that just had a stock FSX, and I installed a stock FSX Steam Edition on there. And for me, I didn't see any improvement, but I know lots of people have, and lots of people have seen 20, 30 frames. And it's true they have made some changes, and it's true they've done some things under the hood. My argument would be you can do that with your box FSX, and you can get a more stable, or at least relatively equally stable. And remember, frames aren't everything. Some people who talk about, oh, I have 80 or 90 frames. I don't care. I'd rather have a smooth running 20 frames per second computer than have one that runs 80 frames per second. So if you're happy with your box edition, you've got all of your add-ons installed, what you're going to find is by the time that you install Steam, if you can even get all the add-ons installed again, you may get that slight performance improvement, but you're running a big risk. And it's very hard to go back.
All right, thanks.
Sure, yeah, go ahead.
I find the biggest thing about the flight simulator, oh my goodness, I gotta have my 80, my 100.
Yeah.
Everybody comes into my community, easternops.com, and oh, how do I get more frame rate? I said, look, the worst they did was show the frame rates. You know what I mean? As long as you're coming into JFK or ORD, and so if you're not doing that, hey, I'm doing 4, if you're coming in 20, 22, as long as it's not glitching, hallelujah. You know what I mean? No matter what your system is, you just have to tweak it the right way and just have fun.
Austin standing up.
Yeah, so just a quick comment. If you look at a movie or something running at 24 frames per second, you might say it's smooth. If you look at Microsoft Flight Sim, XPlane, whatever, running at 24 or 30 FIPS, you might think it's smooth. It looks okay to me. There was a study done, and I don't know if it was NASA or something like that, they did a study where they let pilots fly at various different frame rates in the simulator. Fly approaches at 10 FIPS, 20 FIPS, 30 FIPS, 60 FIPS, 100 FIPS, 200 FIPS. And what they found when they put the little lie detector things on your body and started measuring the sweat coming out of your palms and the galvanic response from your skin, your subconscious flipped over to thinking you were in a real airplane, not a simulator, at 60 FIPS. So at 30 frames per second, they'd say it looks smooth. At 60 frames per second, their palms would start sweating. So anyway, there's a reason that when you set your monitor refresh rates, you can go 60, 72, something in that ballpark. That's your subconscious flips in and thinks it's looking at real motion, not a game anymore. So just
And
a data
that's
point for you.
absolutely correct. Because the previous thinking was that the visual acuity ended at 24 FPS, and there's absolutely a difference at 60.
How much does your rig show there? How much does your setup?
It's locked at 60 frames per second. It's for that exact reason.
So let's talk hardware now. I think we're kind of coming to that point. Let's talk about the system and sort of what makes sense. And one of the common things that we see for people getting into the flight simulation world, or maybe folks in the audience as well, is they'll go out and they'll buy the top-of-the-line Dell or HP machine, and they're like, oh, this thing should be great. So let me ask you, Ken, is that the right approach for someone either who's new or if they're looking to make an upgrade? Should they go out and try and find something from Dell, HP, something like that, or is there another solution?
Well, basically with the PCs, you either want to build your own PC or you want to purchase from a custom builder. The box PCs are really not built to run flight sim. They're built for turnover. It's just not going to work right. You want to build your own PC or you want to buy from a custom builder. Obviously, the cheapest route is to build your own PC, which you won't save any money over Dell or HP doing that because they're so discounted. But yeah, you want to build your own PC or you want to buy from a custom builder, rather it be me or anybody else.
Apparently the microphone works better for the video.
Yeah. You would go through someone like myself because we do the full tech support for the entire sim. Any PCs that we sell, we preload all the software. So as soon as we get a purchase, we give you a call. Are we installing Prepared 3D, XPlane? What are we installing? We'll install it, we'll get the license keys, we'll have 10 hours of flight time on it before we ship it. And basically, you know, above building it from yourself, the reason you would go through someone like us is because you want the tech support for your sim. Getting the 37,000 add-ons to all work together, or you get a glitch, instead of looking for 2 months on the forums to find it, I've got a whole inventory of customers over the last 10 years. I get all the reports back, all the common fixes. We can normally remote it and fix the PC pretty quickly. Well, basically, the only way to have a PC for flight sim is a custom-built PC or one of our PCs.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, that's great. So keep on going, feel free. I guess if you can keep the mic and just kind of keep on clicking away there. There's a couple more slides. Yeah, just the one there. There you go.
Okay, so a lot of questions we get from people, especially here, is they want to upgrade their current PC. So this is a couple little questions. A laptop. Laptops are limited by heat. The most expensive laptop will be underperforming the cheapest desktop. A lot of people think they can go spend $5,000 on a laptop, but the $1,200 desktop is going to outperform it. The mobile revisions of processors, graphics processors, they run at much lower frequencies, much smaller caches. It's a completely different product. And it's because they're limited by heat. You don't have the room in the case to properly dissipate the heat to get the performance out of the system. So they're really, for Flight Simulator, you really got to get out of the world of a laptop. And you got to kind of get that whole thinking, it's just not right now, the hardware isn't there.
Anyone here use a laptop for flight sim?
I used to.
How many?
Only when I travel.
There you go.
So it's all desktop at home, but when I travel, I just have a little laptop.
And at the end of the day, it is flight sim, so it should be more aircraft heavy, right? I mean, my computer, I have every scenery out there. When I fly out, I'll notice when I take off, I didn't even look at the airport I just bought, because I'm paying more attention to the actual simulation. So there is that argument too. Like from the laptop while you're traveling, you can still get a good simulation, you just don't get the eye candy.
Right.
And at the end of the day, it is a flight simulator, and that is the most important part of it. So the next question I would ask you, if you were calling me up, is if you were using an AMD processor. The Intel products are just so far superior to AMD that I would tell you to stop right there and switch over to an Intel backbone system. They don't even compare. And the next thing along with the AMD is the NVIDIA graphics. The NVIDIA graphics, they've just proven so much more stable in flight sim. The AMD graphics card had a couple cool features, like when Infinity first came out, that was a reason to try it, but in just the driver support, it's a lot glitchier, a much higher fail rate, and we've had a lot of issues. So if you had an Intel-based system already, you had a desktop, you had an Intel, but you were using the AMD card, I would recommend looking at one of the new NVIDIA 900 series graphics cards. And the next question is, should I upgrade my memory? So right now, with Evidence and Prepared 3D, they don't really require a lot of memory. Basically, with those two programs, you want more quality than quantity. You don't need to put 32 gigabytes of memory in either of those systems. They don't utilize it. With XPlane, that may be a different answer. But yes, you want to get a good speed, low latency memory around the 8 gigabyte range.
Question.
Yes.
I currently have 1600 megahertz memory. I've overclocked my system though, so I've detuned the memory down to get the processor to run faster. Is there a trade-off there between processor speed and memory speed?
Your overclock can suffer with too high a clock speed of memory because the memory controller is actually on the die of the processor with an Intel processor.
Yeah.
But 1600 megahertz, you're kind of right in the, that's very low speed.
Yeah.
Depending on what generation of processor you have.
i7.
It depends what generation of the i7 processor.
First generation.
The first generation, the 1600 speed pairs perfectly with it.
Okay.
The newest generation, the best trade-off I've seen for speed and latency has been at the 2133. It's a sweet spot. You go faster with the memory, the overclock suffers, the stability of the machine.
Yeah.
The processor requires more voltage to work. So the 2133 with the newest, but each generation is different. And if anyone has any of those questions directly, you can feel free to call me, and I'll be more than happy to answer them for you.
Thank you.
Got one more question just in the middle there.
Yes.
I just got one tip for people too when they're going to upgrade their video. The 900 series is awesome. I switched to it, but one thing to keep in mind is your physical box you may have may not fit these 960 video cards. They're giant. You got to make sure. A lot of people buy Dell systems and stuff and think they're going to throw in a new video card, and your power supply is going to be too small. You got to upgrade your power supply and make sure physically it fits in there. They work fantastic when you get them in, but I run into a lot of people asking me about that.
I'll let you know the Zotac makes a version of the 960 and 970 that looks about maybe 6 inches long. They obviously have a full-size version that barely fits in any computer case, but they have smaller versions. So you can find those, but you have to buy them. They're specialty versions of off the NVIDIA-based design.
I just wanted to point out your mic is kind of shorting out.
Yeah, I think
pieces.
Okay, there you go.
There you go.
Perfect. All right, and this is just pretty much letting everyone know. I mean, at the end of the day, the hardware is what the hardware is. A lot of people have kind of unrealistic expectations, or you have like you were saying earlier, you have 75,000 add-ons. They're not all working well. You're getting crashes to desktop. Buying a new computer is not going to solve your problem. Upgrading the software or it's just not going to solve the problem. The hardware is the hardware. An Intel processor is the same in any machine. Most problems when people call me to buy a system and they're frustrated, they already have a nice system. Because they're flight simmers, right? You have to have a nice system. Yeah. Most of the time when you get to a situation like that, you just got to start over. You got to reinstall the operating system. There's a lot of online communities and forums and guides. There's a lot of support out there. But the advice is to just go slow, especially for the guy with the 100 add-ons. Don't install a system, install every single add-on all at once. Do 1 or 2, test flight, reboot, maybe 5 a week. Do a couple of your favorites. And you'll find that you'll eventually hit a spot where you may be getting those crashes to desktops, but then you know which one's responsible for it because you've gone slow. A lot of times finding that is near impossible, and then you're back to reinstalling the operating system, starting all over again. So the advice is just to take your time with a new system or a new installation. And if you run into instability, it's a lot easier to find. Yes.
Is there a specific way to uninstall third-party aircraft? You got quite a few that I want to get rid of. I just wondering if
I mean, normally you just want to run the product's uninstaller, let it uninstall, reboot the machine, launch the flight simulator. There's not really, they're also different. There's not a specific thing, but just follow the uninstaller with a just like installing. Test flight and reboot in between each add-on, probably the same thing for an uninstallation.
Just put the disk in or whatever.
Yes.
What about Windows 10?
When Windows 10 comes up, I've already purchased a couple copies, and I'll have 5 computers running it, and I'll load it up with as much add-ons as I can and try and break it. It's a lot of times any architectural change they're going to make, the developers have to come around and account for them. Right out of the box, I don't know that it's going to be the way to go, but we don't know until we get it. Windows 7 right now is just the most stable platform. It's good for everybody. Now there is some reason, like all these advanced displays, like 4K displays and stuff, they scale better with a modern operating system. Microsoft wasn't nice to fix some of that stuff in Windows 7, but I wouldn't recommend anyone run out and buy Windows 10 until it's been tested and the bugs have been worked out. So maybe 3 to 6 months, look for the forums, look for the communities of people that have done it, let them be the test subjects. You can call us and I can tell you what my experience was with my certain set of add-ons. And he's got a community, he's going to get Windows 10 and probably test with it. That's where the community support comes in.
Just an FYI for anyone who didn't know, Microsoft is giving people, anyone with a legitimate Windows 7 license can upgrade to Windows 10 completely free up to like a year after it's been released. So like well into the period of time that most developers will have worked out the kinks with Windows 10, there will be ample time for people to like make the transition for free.
Yeah, basically.
That's correct, and that's the whole big thing on the forums right now is the services that they've installed on the PC, using up all the system resources trying to get you to go into Windows 10. So I spend most of my days right now uninstalling all those updates and offers. That's been what I've been doing all day for the last 2 weeks. But yes, if you do want the offer, if you get all those updates, you can sign your email address up. Comes right to your computer, sign up for it. They send you a free copy of Windows 10 or a free license upgrade. But right now, they're forcing all these updates that are preparing the system for the migration. And it's been causing problems and problems and problems.
Is there any way to get them out of there?
Yeah, you uninstall them. There's guides on how to get rid of them on the internet. And I have my own guide that I've been emailing people and doing a lot of. Because we do support, so.
So time for one more question, and we'll probably move on to controls and hardware.
From your experience now with the flight sim world, what is high priority for you in the computer? CPU, memory, or the hard drive?
That's a different answer for every sim platform. So Prepared 3D, which is what we're mainly talking about here, they've been, every update, they've been uploading a lot of the work to the CPU to the GPU.
Okay.
If you look at the change logs, they say tree generation now is a job of the graphics card. When I did a test from the 770 to the 970 when 900 series cards came up, I set up 4K TVs, 4 1080p TVs, and then I ran a benchmark with the 770 with FSX and then Prepared 3D. With FSX, no matter what I changed, the frame rate stayed the same. With Prepared, as soon as I added the multiple monitors, the frame rate dropped significantly, almost cut in half, because they've changed the loading. So the answer is different to FSX, to Prepared 3D, to XPlane.
Just one more very good question there, yeah.
What would you recommend for multiple screen setup in terms of hardware?
For multiple screen setups, I would recommend the 970 or better, the GTX 970 graphics card or better. If you have a 700 series card, you definitely want to upgrade to the 900 series. There's definitely benefit there, especially in Prepared 3D.
Great. I think we'll have to keep going for now.
Okay.
We can have Ken here to talk about. If you want to go real quick through a couple slides here, I think you were this one. And the question everyone asks is, where should I install FSX or P3D?
3 basic spots. I know we're running low on time, so
Mike as well.
it's own FSX folder, CFSX. That's probably the most stable. And then you've got the default tab. And it's kind of an interesting finding that I've had, because for a little while, for 1 year I installed it in the first option, and for 1 year I did it in the default location. And I've actually had a lot less issues with our customer base being in the default location, which it's kind of a hard thing to figure out. Because the default location, you've got a lot of problems with Flight Simulator. You have the user account control, you have all these hidden users that are kind of micromanaging it, and it does interfere with the sim and add-ons. It is very odd. As soon as I switched from installing it there to there, all of a sudden we're no longer doing operating system reinstalls. Because what happens, a lot of the add-ons, they put things outside, they make their own file tree, then the registry gets corrupted and the whole sim gets corrupt. So what I tell people is, if you take the time to manage your FSX installation in the root folder on the C drive, or a secondary hard drive is the absolute best place. If you know you're not that person who's going to take the time to manage it and make sure everything's perfect, and you want to move through your installations fast, you'll be doing yourself a favor by putting it in the default path. Solid state drives, I will make this slide quick for you. They're way better. There you go.
That's perfect. Thanks a lot for that. And excellent points. Lots of opportunity to ask lots more questions. They're both here, Ken and Greg are here tomorrow as well, and they'll be at their booth. So all of these hardware questions are great questions to just ask them directly. And thanks a lot for him for being here today. I'm going to go pretty quickly through control hardware. The key message on this slide is go out and try them. So there's really 4 key groups, I would say, and I'll add GoFlight to this as well. What you want to do is go out and try as many of these different products as you can. If you don't have a yoke today, or if you don't have a control platform today, the 4 big ones, SciTech is probably the best for most people in the consumer industry. If you're looking for a really nice joystick, draw quadrant, whatever it is, that's typically the best you can get when it comes to consumer priced products. If you're looking for a bit more of an investment, that's where you go to your GoFlights. The other option that's here is Iris Dynamics, which is very exciting because there are very few of those yokes out there. And it's sort of that first consumer-priced force feedback yoke. So unlike on a regular traditional yoke where you're going to pull back and then kind of leave the yoke center, that doesn't happen. If you pull back and you trim it out, it will just stay exactly where it is. Totally different feeling from flying in regular flight sim. And a BBA member named Dana, who's sitting at the very end of the BBA setup, has a custom desk and a whole bunch of different monitors, but also is demonstrating that Iris Dynamics yoke. And there are very few of them in the world right now, so it's a great opportunity to give that a try. I would caution people to stay away from CH products. It tends to be one of the more entry-level type products. Now, it's not terrible. A lot of people have it. It's out here in the display. But in terms of the ability to actually get a whole bunch of buttons and different configurations, I mean, it's just a bit of a less intense and less fulsome capability than what you would see in a SciTech type product. Joystick-wise, Logitech makes a great set of products as well. So my suggestion is, please, while you're here, go out and try some of these different products. Just say, hey, I'd like to jump up and use your simulator. Do you mind? I see you're using a SciTech yoke. Why did you choose that one? Why did you choose that over CH products? And ask if that's your interest. And if you don't have the time to do that, probably SciTech is the quick and dirty best option right here. Question?
I went around and tried all the SciTech yokes out there, and I didn't find any of them that I liked.
Yeah, and I think when you look at when you look at flight sim products, particularly the yokes and the SciTech world, the CH products world, the Logitech world, you will never get anything that feels perfect like an actual airplane. And that's even more the case if you're talking about flying something general aviation like a Cessna 172. Yeah, so we found that the SciTech ones tend to work the best. That's been my experience, that's been our experience, but it's not everyone's experience. And so again, that may be the case for you. I have people who hate SciTech stuff and won't touch it, and then I have people that say the same about CH products. So I think if you're looking for a perfect feel, you need to go up a level in price, or up several levels in price. Try out Iris Dynamics and try out GoFlight. That's my suggestion.
I think you go try those 2 that are on the end down there, because those are terrible.
Which ones are those?
The ones right up against the wall. There's 2, just one with a 3D screen on it, and one.
Oh, and the hot seat setup. Okay.
Whether they're bad yokes or not, I don't know.
Okay, well, again, you're here, you have the opportunity. You would try out Iris Dynamics, which is that force feedback one, and then GoFlight, which is back on the corner there. Two really great platforms and great products, but again, much higher price tag. I'll talk quickly, well, we'll try and talk quickly about add-ons. I could spend an hour talking about add-ons in and of themselves. There are many, literally hundreds, if not thousands of developers, both in the payware and the freeware world. What I'm going to try and do is give you some names. I'm not going to talk a whole lot about each of them, but I'm going to give you some names and some categories, starting with the must-haves. There are two products I think should be on every single FlightSim PC if it's prepared for FSX. The first one is ActiveSky Next, and I've written on the board, no excuses, make it happen, because I think that it really is essential to any sort of flight simulator. ActiveSky Next, who's heard of ActiveSky? Okay, so it is a weather add-on. What it will give you is weather that matches as closely as possible with what's actually out the window. If you're looking to fly into hard IFR and breakout at minimums, you will not get that from any default simulator. You need ActiveSky Next to make that happen. Incredible realism that gets added onto your simulator, whether you're flying low and slow or airliners, you'll find that there's a dramatic improvement there.
Did you say that was both Flight Simulator and Prepared 3D?
Yes.
Okay.
And I don't know about XPlane. I believe it also is compatible with XPlane, but there's a separate version. The second one I would say is a must-have is Rex 4, Texture Direct. This gives you a number of great improvements over the default texture. So if ActiveSky puts the clouds in place, Rex makes them look nice. And you've got roads and things like coastlines, just the way the ground looks. You'll find it's just much more realistic and much more of an improvement, particularly on the FSX side. Prepared has done a lot of that work, so it may not be quite as essential, but if you're an FSX user, I would recommend basically these two for every single one. If you're going out and buying a new copy of FSX Steam Edition today, I wouldn't even run it until both of those are actually running on the simulator.
What's the, sorry to go,
yeah.
The advantage of, you say no excuses to make it happen, so which one would you suggest?
I would suggest both, actually.
Both?
Yes, I think both of
they
these...
don't fail?
No, they actually work very well together. Rex's products, they used to have a weather component. I would always disable them because Rex's weather was always not that good. But I think these work very well together. There's no need for that.
What is the loading of the computer? With the
doesn't make a substantial difference at all. ActiveSky maybe more so, but it'll depend on a whole bunch of factors, including the weather. We'll talk about Orbix, FTX Global Base, and FTX Global Vector. Who's heard of them or has them installed? Okay, so FTX Global Base and Vector I have as an encouraged purchase. I wouldn't necessarily say everyone has to go out and buy these like I would for ActiveSky or Rex. But if you're someone particularly who likes to fly the general aviation, the low and slow, if you'd like to pick up a section and actually follow a road, you pretty much need this to make that happen. And especially for FlightSim, either FSX or Steam Edition, the data is back in 2006, so roads, cities may have changed. This is a picture from the Orbix website. Again, it's not my sim, it's just an Orbix picture. But you can see on the right, your right as well, the FTX Global setup. And it just looks so much more fulsome. There's a lot more trees. They've actually developed the city properly. The river looks a little better. And you'll find that the placement of all those things, the trees, etc., is much more accurate in the FTX Global world than in the default. So that's a pretty expensive price tag, about $150 for both. But it's a good one to consider once you've got a few flights in if you're looking to make that next upgrade. I'll talk about aircraft. I'm just going to give you names here. Won't talk anymore. These are all in the presentation, so don't feel the need to just scribble them all down right now. But I'll note that A2A Simulations is here. You can try out their stuff. Fantastic general aviation aircraft. On the airliner side, PMDG and Aerosoft, both of them were here. You saw them both earlier today. Excellent quality stuff. PMDG for the 737 and the 777. How many have a PMDG product? A lot of people. Good. And Aerosoft, same thing for the Airbus series. So lots of great options, and again, you can actually go out and try out these products. Boston Virtual ATC members will be happy to let you borrow their computers and give them a try. Just some more names here again. Talked about GoFlight, they're here, have a chat with them. Same story for FSFX packages. What they do, they're very new developer, they actually develop sort of textures around the aircraft itself. So things like contrails, they have a really nice add-on for precipitation like rain, things like that. They're here, have a chat with them, great stuff. Aerosoft I've talked about already, but in addition to their aircraft, lots of great scenery type things as well. Airport scenery names, Fly Tampa, FS Dream Team, Orbix, and Track IR. Is there Track IR? Okay, that's good. So that's a head tracking software. So if you're sitting in the downwind, you move your head like this to look at the runway, the game moves as well. So no more using your joystick and having to try and fiddle around with the hat switch. It's really nice stuff. You just turn your head and the in-game head moves as well. And Dana, the same person with the Iris Dynamics yoke, is able to demonstrate that for you. That's a really good one to try before you buy, so a great opportunity there for sure. And I'll talk a bit about iPad apps. Both ForeFlight and FlightPlan Go work with FSX. So if you can buy the product for ForeFlight, it's called FSX Flight. FlightPlan Go, there's a free product, but you can actually integrate them. So this is me flying into Telluride in FlightSim. And all the same features that you get in ForeFlight or FlightPlan Go in an airplane are all available online. That question somewhere? Yes?
I'll go try the track IR out there, but just a quick question on it. When you center back, does it jitter or does it just stay on the screen? You know how
Right, it's all customizable, so you can set it up so, for example, there might be a dead zone in the middle. That's how I have mine set up, so if I just do this a little bit, nothing changes.
I suggest like you set up your rudder pedal.
You got it, exactly. Okay. And you can also set a key command to center you. So sometimes I'll just use that if I'm kind of, you can disable it if you want entirely with the key command, and then re-enable it when you want to. So on approach, you might want it on. During the cruise portion of the flight, you might not. A little bit on performance, we talked about it before. Have the latest updates installed, update your graphics card, update your drivers. Those things make a real improvement on performance, so they are definitely worth doing. We've talked already, though not this one yet. Learn from Oscar the Grouch is the next one. Keep your computer clean. This is a good investment. It's a flight simulator PC. Try to avoid putting a bunch of other things on it, the Photoshops and the Skypes. They will have an impact on performance. Other applications and games, again, you're buying a $3,000 PC. I'd be crazy to think you're not going to run anything else on it. But the less that you run on it, the less chance there is of a virus, of a problem, those kinds of things. We've talked about installing your add-ons slowly already, so I don't need to repeat that. Just making sure that you're installing an add-on, open the sim, do a quick flight, close it, reboot it, then do the next one. It really is worth it because each of those add-ons may make some changes to FSX files only when the simulator's open. So if you wait to install a whole bunch of them at once, now FlightSim is trying to go and make all these configuration changes all at once, and that can be a problem. And also, you never know if you install 5 at once, which one caused that problem. Just save the question for us. Go ahead.
Quick one. Do any of these features determine whether a flight school can use this setup as a flight training device for training or not?
None of these specifically would, no. And overclock and tweak at the end. So get a stable system and then break it afterwards, but make sure that you can always go back to that stable platform and avoid having this beautiful picture of no taxis and aircraft descending into the grass. I'll talk just very quickly about online aviation. A website to write down is fsxmultiplayer.com. That's a really good one because it talks all about online aviation. So if you've been a kind of person who's wondering, should I get online, should I join some communities, the website talks all about why you want to do that, and then it gives you a really good list of all the different communities that are out there. So I don't need to talk more about that, but I will say for those who are kind of skeptical or wondering about it, all of our communities, including the BVA materials up there, we talk a lot about flight training. That's a big component. We want to make it so that if you have no experience flying online or no experience flying, you're good to go. We can teach you the things that you need. And so we'll have lots of resources around how to get started, how to get connected, what to do if you're someone who already has experience or you already have real-world experience. All of those kinds of things are built into all of these communities, and we want people there. So just like we were saying in the panel discussion, we'd love you guys to join us and join online. Whether it's us, whether it's VATSIM, whether it's IVO, it doesn't matter. The important thing is to get out there and to meet other people just like yourselves so they can help you and you can get that help and that community support with your setup and those types of things.
A question.
Yeah.
Which of those is VATSIM for the U.S.? I generally do my flying here in the U.S. I see online, it looks like a lot of that's international. What would be more so for the U.S. of those three?
You generally see a lot of support from the international community generally, both on VATSIM and IVAO. I would say VATSIM is more US-based, but both will have presences in both. Boston Virtual is very specific to the Northeast. We cover sort of this area and the New York Center, so sort of New England and New York State kind of areas. And I find that, generally speaking, it's sort of a matter of figuring out where the controllers are. And they're not mutually exclusive. You can join all three. And many people fly on all three. And they'll fly on IVAO when they're in Europe. They'll fly on VATSIM when they're doing a long haul in the US. And if they want to do some GA stuff, they may come over and fly on BDA. So lots of options for sure there. Definitely check out the communities. There's 4 of us here. You can have a chat, take a look outside, see who's here, and just get more familiar with each of them as you go. Sorry, Mark, go ahead.
Just a quick question. I've been with BVATC for a couple of years, and the mentoring has been phenomenal, and everyone's so patient. Should I assume that Prepared and/or XPlane will not be usable in BVATC?
They will be within the next couple of weeks.
You say weeks?
Yeah, hopefully. Certainly, hopefully by the end of the summer. I know I'm short on time, so I'm just going to have to cut off the questions here. This is sort of the summary of what we've talked about. More of this is available online. I'm going to skip this slide. This is the link that you want to write down as far as today's presentation. BostonVirtualATC.com/FlightSimCon. Please don't go there yet because I haven't uploaded the presentation. But in about 5 minutes, I will have. So that's a great place to go and get all of the links. There's actually more information in there than there was on this presentation, so all those links are there. I would love to answer some questions, but I'm out of time, so I'll go outside and do that. And thank you very much for being here and for your time.